Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. Story time. Let's say 3-4 months ago, about a month before Jayanma arrived into my life and changed my life for the better forever, I sat down with my amazing friend, Antoinette Chanel, and she said, "Hey, Tom, I'm starting this podcast where what I want to do is have great conversations with awesome people where we create art, where we doodle, where we draw as we talk. Would you be interested?" I said, "Heck yes." And if you're down with it at the end, I'd love to share that replay of that interview with the good folks of the Celebration family. She's like, "I'm down." I said, "I'm down." We got together, I think it was a Friday night, drew, did some art, had some great conversation. And what you're gonna hear next is the replay of that episode is us talking. So Antoinette broke it into 2 different episodes and I'm combining it into one. So you might hear in the middle a part where you're like, what was that? That was me combining the 2 episodes. So, hey, make sure you show Antoinette some love. She is the founder of the Midday Reset. Great friend of mine. I respect the work that she's doing, changing so many lives all the time. Author, such a great person. I've actually interviewed her before, so you can check that episode out if you want to hear more of her origin story and the great work she's doing. Show notes down below where you're going to see where you can listen to that. So without further ado, let me get out of the way and you can check out this replay from Antoinette's podcast. Here we go.
So thank you so much for agreeing to color with me this evening. It's evening here where I am. I know it's just afternoon where you are still.
Late afternoon, almost 3:30.
Okay.
But it's honestly my pleasure. I appreciate it so much. I enjoyed when we got a chance to talk when you were on my podcast. So to get to be on yours, it's an honor. And I know we're going to have a good conversation. So thank you.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you. And I very much enjoyed getting to be a guest on your show when you had me. So thanks so much for inviting me to that too. So this is kind of a new concept that I have going where I am having more conversations with guests.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm somebody who works to try to curb anxiety in her life, coloring is something that I've taken up as just kind of a nice stress relieving hobby. And I figured, well, I know that when I was younger, it worked to be able to sit down and color with somebody that I didn't know, and then all of a sudden they were my friend afterwards. And so I figured, well, let me see if that still works. I don't know if there's an age limit on it. I don't know if there's location boundaries, but let me see if that still works. And because it's the internet and the internet needs more nice stuff, I figured this can't hurt anything. So let's try it.
I like it. I got some markers here and my sheet of paper I'm coloring on too. So I'm looking forward to it.
So are you coloring something in or are you drawing something?
I like to do abstract. So I'll be doing some sort of abstract coloring.
Okay, awesome. So what I've got right here, I'm just going to show you. I am using my coloring book from Crayola for adults, but I've got all these daisies here on this page. So I'm going to see what I can do with those.
Here's mine so far.
Okay, awesome. You're doing good. Doing really good.
I'll show you. We'll show what it's like at the very end, right?
Yes, most definitely.
And for folks who are listening and not watching, I held up a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, completely blank. And he's doing such a good job. I'm really proud of him.
Well, one thing I was thinking of is I really like to send handwritten cards to people.
Yes.
And I had been looking for places online that had like affirmation cards I could include in them.
Yes.
And today when I was walking home from the bus stop, I was like, wait, don't you have something like that?
Yes, I do.
I was kicking myself that I didn't get my order from you. So I'm going to have to get the next one from you. So I was wondering, like, what did they say? Like, could they fit in a standard size greeting card? And could you just tell me about that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I should have some.
And
Near
we didn't
five.
plan this. Antoinette didn't say immediately start by giving me
Asking
a
me about
segment.
my product.
It's
Asking
genuinely
about so that I can sell all my stuff. Yeah, no, this was totally unrehearsed. Okay, so I've got an affirmation pack right here. So I'll take it out of the packaging in a second, but it's got the mandala logo on the back. And then the affirmation pack actually includes a bracelet right now.
Oh, that's cool.
It will include other things as well as we kind of continue to develop the product. But I can show you one of the affirmations here. I can read it to you.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so each affirmation deck as well as pack comes with 5 affirmation cards. So you get a deck of 5. And so the one that I've been sharing on social media a lot says, get good at identifying energy sources and energy drains. So what do you think of when you think of energy sources and energy drains?
I try to, as much as I can, take complete ownership on both accounts. So usually for me, a drain is when I get mad at myself for lowering my own standards. So for instance, if somebody gets me upset or I'm frustrated with somebody, it's usually because I'm not speaking up or I'm letting someone walk all over me, or, so it's usually both on my end I have found that I'm not protecting my boundaries and keeping my own standards up. And then my other energy drain is like the limiting belief that I've been working on getting over is that everything has to come through grit and stress and hard work and efforting and no sleep and da 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 da. And every time I do that, 2 weeks in a row, week 3, I'm sick the whole week without fail. So
yeah, I can actually identify with that on both accounts with both of the things that you said. So, okay, so because that's echoing in my mind right now, the whole idea that you can achieve progress and success without having to stress yourself out or just completely take yourself to the limit. Yeah, that's probably been the resounding message that I've gotten this week, that, you don't necessarily have to put yourself through all of that anguish in order to move forward and to learn something and to progress in some way. Yeah. So, what was the first thing you had said? Because I was holding the card and then oh, yes. Okay. So, as far as contributing to being an energy source or an energy drain, I know that I get so frustrated. I actually got frustrated with myself last week because I was choosing to engage in things that I knew were not going to fulfill or enrich me or enlighten me in any way. And I was flocking to those things, and I knew this is just going to make you upset. This is just going to frustrate you. But I did it anyway. And I was like, okay, well, you drained yourself of energy, Antoinette. You can't really be mad at anybody else because you chose that. So, yeah, that's been my lesson recently with that.
It's one that I keep coming back to.
Yeah. Setting boundaries has been a really huge thing for me this year. I've had to learn how to say no and mean it and look out for myself before I start looking out for other people and setting boundaries that way. And it's been kind of scary because I've had to do that with people who are in my family, but I'm grateful for it because I feel like it gives me more space to be free.
Yeah. In 2015, that's when I really had to get between the fall of 2015 and maybe March of 2016. That's when I sat down and built a whole new relationship with no. Because I had said yes to so many things that I was just perpetually burnt out and overcommitted and running myself ragged. And so that's been one of and it's something, a relationship I try to get stronger in every year. But I really have found that my ability to say no to things, and it was the year Shonda Rhimes released her year of yes. So like for me, it was my year of no. And I have found that having a strong no has been, because saying yes to things wasn't necessarily my area of improvement I needed to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a huge one in my life too.
Yeah, I was kind of raised on the idea that you always had to say yes. Like you were lucky to have the opportunity to say yes, so you better say yes. That was kind of what I was indoctrinated into. And I believe that it contributed to turning me into the sort of overachiever that I am these days, because I know that I have a lot. I'm not saying that I'm the strongest person in the world, but I know that I have a lot of inner motivation to say, okay, let's pick up and start again. Let's pick up and try again. Let's pick up and just, I'll keep trying no matter what. Even if I have zero strategy, zero plan, I'll just keep trying. I think that I'm grateful for that, because I know that it's propelled me to where I am currently and where I'm going. But at the same time, it's also made me so dang tired. I'm so burnt out from saying yes to so many things and overcommitting myself and thinking that like I had to do those things in order to progress in some way. So finding freedom in saying no to that kind of stuff, that's been really helpful for me this year. But it's also been really difficult. It's not something I just slid into.
What do you think, if you don't mind me asking, do you think the way that society socializes us in terms of being men and women and feeling different pressures to like feel like you have to say yes, or you have to put an extra effort, or you have to go a little bit harder? Because like for me, for instance, as a white guy, like doors aren't going to be closed for me. So I don't have to like have this feeling of I got to show up and prove myself. I mean, we all do in terms of how we're socialized, in that we don't feel worthy in a capitalist society, but I don't have that extra aspect that I feel like people are going to close the door on me because when they see me, they're going to shut down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so your question, when I hear that, I hear kind of like two different layers to the answer that I have to that. So first and foremost, absolutely, women everywhere are always kind of socialized into the idea that, you have to be the peacemaker and you have to be the one who gets along with people and you have to be the one to say sorry and you have to be the one to be agreeable, because otherwise there's something wrong with you if you are like saying no to stuff and putting up a fuss, basically, which it's not even really a fuss if you just say no to something. But it's really amazing how many men, and I'm not saying this to say like, oh, men are pigs, blah, blah, blah. Like that's not even me, but it's amazing how many men don't know how to respect a woman's no when she says it. I mean, I had a superior on a previous job who he was throwing this Christmas party and I just didn't want to go. I wasn't feeling it. And he was like, it sends a message if you don't go. You need to be there. You need to come to this party, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, fine. And it was a virtual job. So like I didn't have to actually go anywhere, but just attend this kind of webinar Christmas party thing. And I just didn't want to go. I wasn't feeling it, but he was so adamant that I had to be there that I just decided for my own sanity that it was easier to say, okay, fine, sure, I'll go, than to keep saying no. But he didn't want to respect the fact that I was saying no to him. So, there's that. But then also with being a Black woman are expected to hold up everybody and their mama in the community. And it's like, I've never been excited for that. Like when I was young, I never was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to hold the whole community on my shoulders. And I've never condoned that. Like I always feel like, gosh, that's a lot to put onto our women and girls. And so, so yes, to answer your question, yeah, I think that politics plays a role in that for sure. And I've felt that and seen that myself.
Well, I appreciate you answering, because it's, just having self-awareness for me, talking about like, oh, I'm trying to work on like working less and not working as hard. But like, there's no cultural stereotypes of me as a white guy saying that. But I imagine like if I was a black man saying like, I'm going to work, my thing is I want to work less. I want to work harder. Like stereotypes that people already have about me as a black man saying that. It's just bringing up for me in this moment, within the self-help, personal development, business development space, there's a lot of things that people push that really doesn't have any of, I think, that self-awareness to it.
And I think that there are different layers to that self-help awareness, for different people. And I don't know if we always acknowledge that there's like different kinds of people need different kinds of help, but I don't think we want to say that out loud a lot of times. And so that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for, like with the example you mentioned with Black men, it doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for them to have alternative narratives, not without being tormented somewhat with them. But you seem to be very aware and in tune when it comes to social issues and stuff. I know that was one thing that kind of drew me to you when I first saw your profile on Instagram, as I was like, oh, okay, he like seems to care about issues that are, not so mainstream. And so I'm curious to know, were you always this way? Were you raised to be this way? Or was this something that you kind of came to be? Or I'm always curious when I meet somebody who is white who is like that, because I feel like it takes some kind of intention for somebody who's white to be that way. Not to say that people who are white can't have intention. Obviously you do and other people do. But, if you don't have to step outside of your bubble, then you don't have to. I mean, I can't say that I necessarily would always want to step outside of my comfort bubble if I lived in one. I would hope that I would, but I'm just being realistic that, I mean, most people would say to you that, they hope that certain groups would give certain sacrifices. But I think that that's a lot to ask, because I don't know that I would do the exact same thing if I was put in the same position. And I'd rather not, run down that whole hypothetical, because we really have no way of telling.
Well, this one thing that I would assume that there are some areas in your life where you do have privilege and that you do step out and are an ally to people. So, you know what I'm saying? Like one area is race, but then I'm, religion, sexual orientation, class, all these other ones. So for me, I started to become politically active right around the Iraq War, when we started to invade Iraq.
Okay.
And that coincided with me being really into punk rock. So I think that things went hand in hand, and that like the punk rock, I started to listen to these lyrics, and it started to have me see that like, oh, like the US doesn't, the wars that the US starts aren't all wars against the Nazis, World War II. Like there's another narrative that since World War II, like Vietnam, like, Panama, all these different places where, whether it's the CIA or, the US, in whatever way that there's injustice committed in our name. And so I started to become aware of those kind of things, but it didn't go beyond that until I was in college. And then I took a Black Studies course. And that's when I was introduced to a more like now we all know the term intersectional lens, where we talk about, different forms of identities in the way that, because of the systemic way our society is set up, that it impacts us as individuals and then collectively. And so I was at the time a music major, and I was taking different Black Studies classes, and I loved the way after each class I would leave feeling like I looked at the world and my place in it completely different. Like it was these things that I had no idea about. And then finally someone told me, so I now had the choice. Do I want to keep remaining like oblivious? Although now I know, so it's an intentional choice. or do I want to take ownership of this, and do I want to engage in it? And so for me, every time I would realize that, oh, this was a blind spot, this is an area of bias that I'm intentionally, or usually it was unintentionally, implicit bias participating in. Now I have the choice that, do I want to go through the work and the practice of removing this so I can be a better person, so I can treat people better and do my part in making the world a better place. So I decided to change my major to Black Studies. So that's what I graduated with. So that gave me the really strong foundation that when I graduated, I went and volunteered full-time for 2 years through Americorps, which is the domestic version of the Peace Corps, at a nonprofit that their mission was to end discrimination by cultivating leadership in high school students. So then I started participating in as a facilitator, somebody who was creating a workshop or a process that myself with my co-facilitators would take a diverse group of students, and we'd go through different forms of systemic discrimination. Like we'd have an interfaith workshop, an LGBTQ workshop, race workshop, gender workshop. And so that's when I really started engaging in it as a facilitator. And then I've been doing that. So if that was 2010, I've been doing that ever since. So that's where a lot of the experience, and it really comes from people really taking the emotional labor and their time and pulling me aside and saying, Tom, that was bogus. You're wrong. Here, let me hold a mirror. Let me bring this to your awareness. And then at that point, then I had the choice to be like you were saying, like, how many times before people pulled me aside did I not believe women when they would say either yes or no? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, because when you're socialized as a man in a sexist society, you're taught that subconsciously and consciously, you know better than women. And so when they tell you something, it's like, well, actually, I know better than you. Although usually most men don't realize that we're doing that. It's usually a subconscious thing. That's what's happening. So there's so many women before then and even now that I do that as well. And so each time I make the resolve and I become more self-aware of what the behavior was that I did that led to that kind of action, and I try to improve upon it.
Awesome.
So that's my long-winded answer for your question too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I enjoyed listening to every bit of that. And there was a piece of what you were saying about, like, you know, when you're somebody who is ignorant at first because you just don't know, you haven't been exposed to something, someone hasn't told you otherwise, you know, it's, you have a right to be sort of bumping around there in the dark. But then once you know better, then of course it's on you to go and try to educate yourself and, you know, figure things out and dive a little bit deeper. But I had just recently posted about that. Speaking of affirmations, I had recently posted about that onto Instagram, that, you know, sometimes the best thing that you can do when you're in a position like someone like me, who is someone, I'm a Black woman. I was going to say person of color. I don't really like that phrase anymore, but I'm a Black woman, and I'm somebody who, more often than not, in most spaces, people probably aren't going to be speaking or acting from the lens of, like, you know, how I would see things.
You were talking about, you know, being in spaces where if something offensive happens, it's usually not people seeing it or knowing it happened.
Well, yeah. And so one of the nicest things that you can do, and I mentioned this recently in an affirmation, is that you, like, don't get all embarrassed. I know that what just came out of that person's mouth is completely ridiculous. And, you know, if they knew better, they probably wouldn't be saying it. Now, this isn't everybody. I know that there's some people who just speak recklessly just because. But there are a lot of people who I think would really love to be able to learn, but we don't give them the opportunity to, because we don't give them the opportunity to be curious. Because every time people are curious or say the wrong thing or make a mistake, we jump all over them.
I mean, that's why I'm a big believer in dialogue, because when you're in a space where ground rules are set and you warm people up, you get to know each other, you build rapport and a little bit of trust, then when I say something, we're in a space where the intention is that we do work through it together.
Right. I think that we've skipped that step altogether. I don't know. It seems like we've jumped from the idea of let's hear somebody out to, okay, they pissed me off, so now let's cancel them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it depends on the context. I think in terms of how long these kind of oppressions have been going on, I think that like time is up or shut it down or cancel them, or like, I think that has its place. So I think that, for some people, for me, like if we think of activism as a spectrum, like I'm going to like sit on the freeway, shut it down is like, to me, just as needed as the like, let's sit down and dialogue. Because for most people, they don't even want, like, they're not even going to dialogue about it until it interrupts their life. And then they're all frustrated. Oh my, and then someone's like, okay, let me talk to you. Let's talk about it. But for most people, like in the majority, like it took like a white supremacist president for a lot of people used to think we were in post-racial America. Do you remember hearing that when Obama was elected?
Oh, yeah. People still mention that today, actually. But I'm like, really? You're still saying that? That's so funny. That's like hearing the word floppy disk, the term floppy disk. Like that's so, at least that's how I receive it anyway. But yes, I do remember that.
So a lot of things don't connect for people until it connects on a personal level, which is to me the problem with empathy. Somebody the other day said to me, they were like, I don't like any of the Democrats, so I might just vote for Trump. And so I was like, and I knew it was somebody that they knew my wife. So I was like, okay, so basically you want to deport my wife and you want to ban my religion and you think that, my whole entire in-laws are from a shithole country. And they were like, oh, yeah. I'm like, yeah, your voting has consequences. Like if that, like, don't come in here saying you love us and then you're going to empower someone like that. And they were like, you could tell for the first time ever, they were like, oh, like my actions have consequences. You know what I mean? It was like, you saw that to them, it was like, it's not just a joke.
Yeah, I think that throughout this whole, throughout, having Trump elected and just kind of the changeover, because see, I live in Florida now, but I grew up in Southern California. And what's interesting about living in Florida right now is that when I moved here in 2014, the state was, is it blue? Blue is for Democrats, right? Okay, yeah. So the state was blue. Obama had won Florida in 2012. Looking back at that, I don't know how he did it, but he won Florida. So when I moved here, this was a blue state, but then it turned into a red state in 2016. And so it's really interesting because I got to witness just exactly what that looked like as far as just change in people's attitudes, in the propaganda, in just the way that people would act. It became different around here in Florida. And so I think that the whole idea of voter responsibility and taking real true ownership of this nation of ours, I think that that's resonated with people recently. I think that I see more people starting to catch on that, oh, what I do and what I cast votes for actually makes a difference. And I should probably think about that. But here's what I wonder, and you can tell me how you feel about this. Is it possible for us to, because you were talking about I know someone who I love very much who voted for Trump, and I am very sad that he did that, but he chose to do that, and it is what it is. And when I talk to this person about why they voted for Trump and why they still support Trump, they always talk about it from an economic standpoint and, no more outsourcing of jobs and no more, celebrating the outsourcing of industry and bringing more jobs home and creating more jobs here. This person who I'm talking about is someone who lost their job when jobs were being moved overseas. So I get that. And I don't think this person is somebody who would be in favor of having someone like your wife deported and, the kind of stuff that's happening at the border and stuff. I don't think they're in support of that entirely. And so I wonder how much, because I know I mentioned cancel culture just a second ago, but I just wonder how much can we pick and choose? Like, are we able to take what we like and leave the stuff that we don't like when it comes to people and their behavior? Because I know that there's been a lot of conversations about this with regard to Jay-Z and this whole NFL deal and Kaepernick and, a lot of situations that have happened recently. So what do you think about that? Like, is it possible to take what you like and leave the other stuff, or is it all or nothing?
Well, for me, I think I think a lot of this came up with Ellen sitting next to Bush too. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
So I think a lot of it, first of all, all of this is a personal decision. And I think the ways that this affects you because of your identity, I think puts you in closer proximity to having more of a spot on answer. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the furthest removed from how it affects me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it depends. For me, a big part is how much that person has power. So like my uncle or my aunt or my friend or my cousin or my friend from high school, like they have power in their personal life and in their personal sphere, but they don't have power in terms of influencing thousands or millions of people. So, for people in my life who are family members or friends who voted for Trump, for me, it's not, I didn't cancel them. You try to use my relationship to be a bridge, like in that example I gave of sharing the consequences. Or I say to people who are like, I vote for Trump because of the economic things. First of all, I say, so what you're saying is like, I'm willing to take advantage of the economic benefits he's going to give me, knowing that it's going to be at the expense of black and brown people. So like, then you got to own that. That's part of which is basically like, a white thing. Like, I want the benefits that come with being white and getting the jobs, and I won't have to face any of the pressure of, his rhetoric around, police should use excessive force. Yes, they should do that. People at the border should separate kids. Like all of this language that has very real consequences on even people that we consider to be living the perfect American ideals, where you have a job, you're with your family, you're paying your taxes, all of these kind of things, like in gun carry states, that you have your permit, that you tell the police officer you have the permit. All of these things, even then, because you are sharing this identity that Trump is continually putting down, you are going to be negatively impacted by that. But I can look the other way when I'm white because it doesn't have a negative impact on me. So that's a conscious choice of white privilege I'm taking part in that I first have to recognize. After that, I say, and if you're still going to support Trump, then you have to use your voice to say out loud to your friends, to all those around you, to other Republicans online, that I want to support Trump, but I cannot support these other things. Mm-hmm. But I don't hear any Trump supporters saying that I love the stuff Trump does for business and these kind of things, but I like am unequivocally do not support your racism, your Islamophobia, your things at the border. Like, then challenge your leaders to become the best version of themselves. But most people I see, they aren't doing that, which leads me to think that you must not have that big of a problem with it. So that's usually the conversation I have with Trump supporters who I have a relationship with.
Okay. And thank you for sharing that. It's good to get somebody else's point of view on that. Yeah, I'm not sure what the perfect or right answer is for that. I think that it's unfortunate because I'm sad that in my lifetime I had to witness seeing this country be so divided the way that it has been over the last few years since, Trump has been elected. It just seems like we've become so divided as a people. And I don't think that that is the solution for whatever is coming next. And I have no idea what it is, but whatever is coming next, I think it's going to require us to be kind and loving and generous and accepting of each other in order for us to succeed. I don't think that we're going to succeed by distancing ourselves from each other. That's just me personally.
So I guess this is the intermission. This is the end of Antoinette's episode 1 of part 1 of 2 of our conversation together. Let's go ahead and jump back into part 2 of this episode. Here we go.
Yes, tell me, what's up?
I'm with you. I mean, like when we take into things like Brene Brown.
Yes.
When we talk about shame, like most people, let's just say just violent people in general, people who perpetuate violence. Often at the root of that is shame, is like these kind of things that are being perpetuated. Mm-hmm. So a lot of white people have white shame, and that's why they can't work through that. Like let's take example, some white people I know who, for them to be loved by their father, they have to be a high achiever. So then if I say to them, you did not achieve every single thing, you didn't achieve anything you had without white privilege helping you. Like for them to own that subconsciously, they have to then recognize that my father's going to love me less because I didn't achieve this by my own bootstraps, all of these kind of things. So then how do you disentangle that? Like that's not real love anyways. That's your father's own baggage. It has nothing to do with you. Most people aren't putting in that kind of an emotional work anyways. That's going to allow them to free themselves up to start to take personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so that's not something that you can get people to have an aha moment in while attacking them. That said, and I know I'm going on a tangent, that said, people who are in power that are perpetuating these kind of, racist ideologies, sexist ideologies, I do think that those people should have their power taken away. I don't think that if you have power, you have influence, that the public spotlight is a place for you to have these transformative aha moments. Your power needs to be taken away, and then you can have your transformation, your therapy, all those kind of things. If you're a transformed person and are no longer perpetuating violence, then you're a different person. I'm not going to hold you to who you were in the past. Mm-hmm. But if your actions perpetuate violence and systemic oppression, then I am of the belief that leadership is not yours. I'm not going to touchy-feely work through it with you while you're at the same time using your leadership to hurt other people.
Yeah, I hear you. And my only, I think, caveat or maybe modification to that would be that I just don't think anybody should do that, and I don't think anybody should utilize their influence to affect that kind of negative wave of action, so to speak. I don't think anyone should do that. I mean, definitely we don't want the leaders doing that, but for sure, I see so many people doing that on so many different levels that I'm like, let's just go ahead and cut all of that out altogether because it's terrible. Okay, so I want to circle back to something, because something that you mentioned, I was like, okay, I get what he's saying, but what about, so you were talking about like not white supremacy, but white privilege, and how, if someone feels that they are not worthy of like love or attention or acknowledgement because they haven't achieved, then, that's the way it is. Like their dad's not going to care about them if they haven't achieved a bunch of stuff. So what I'm wondering is, what if in that scenario, instead of the father being like, okay, you didn't actually achieve this stuff on your own, like by pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, you achieved it because of your white privilege. What about the cases when you've got fathers who are like, no, I expect you to use your white privilege. If you're not using it, then there's a problem with you and I'm going to disown you for it. Like, what about because I feel like those are scenarios that are happening that are like, it's all tough to break out of, but I think those are really, really tough to break out of because I've met some people who were living in that. Have you encountered that before?
I haven't heard any fathers use, or like white people using that kind of language. Most people to me who are using that kind of language don't really believe white privilege exists. They believe that whiteness itself is better, is best, is the most important.
Okay,
And so
keep going. Sorry, but I hear what you're saying.
so I think it's more the almost regular things that we as white men are taught, that it's just the regular narrative is that, it's yours for the taking, you go for it. And I think white privilege deployed also looks like, like, well, I'll just make a donation, or I'll just talk to the judge, or I know that police officer, or boys will be boys, or, like those kind of things I think are the ways that white men to white men communicate, like whiteness is okay, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the clarifier. Well, I lost your question though. Like what about for people in situations like that?
Well, yeah, because you were talking, like I feel like we've been going back and forth on this whole idea of privilege, and, once you are conscientious of what your privilege holds, and, how it kind of makes things easier for you, how you can sort of take some actions to make sure that you're either stepping outside of that or making sure that other people get to have access to the same opportunities, so that, you can kind of balance the playing field a little bit. But I think that there are a lot of people, what I was saying to you when I asked my question is, I think there's a lot of people that actually get indoctrinated into the idea that, no, we have this privilege and we're going to use it. We love it. And we're going to use it to the fullest. And this is good for us, And I mean, again, I'd like to think that I wouldn't be so ruthless, but at the same time, I can't promise that I wouldn't be if I had access to that kind of power or opportunity. And I'm just saying that as somebody who's trying to be an honest human. After living as a Black woman, of course, I feel differently about that. But if I was just placed into a situation where I had privilege right off the bat, I would probably want to live it up and just be happy. And that's kind of the point, is that, like, you don't want to be inconvenienced, or what I saw a quote that said something about, like, the degree to which you don't want to be made uncomfortable, that is your privilege. I hear footsteps again. I knew it. Yes. Hi. What's up?
It's later, Mom.
Okay. Yeah, it is later. Oh my gosh.
You said later.
And it's later. We did exactly what you said. Oh, he's gone. Okay. He's my independent one. Like he'll just come and tell me what he's doing. And hi.
She waits for him. Once he does it, then she's in, huh?
Yeah, can you, like, tell their personalities, like, just based on what you're seeing right here? Because she's, like, the really boisterous one, and he's, like, the chillax one. I was actually surprised when it was him when he opened the door. Yeah. Parenthood. That's fun.
On what you're saying, that I don't know all your, for example, and you can tell me if you don't want to answer. Do you identify as Christian?
No.
Do you identify as, like, Jewish or Muslim or Sikh?
No.
So then you more or less have some form of, like, within the religion category, privilege. But I don't see you, like, if you see a Muslim woman being like, let's get her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that as far as my beliefs are concerned, they probably would align closer to Christian than they would to Islam or Judaism, like probably more Christian. But as far as, like, practice and stuff, like, no, I don't really do that. I'm not in the practice of, I haven't attended church in a very long time.
But I'm just pointing out that like, and I'm sure if we went through like more personal ones, we were say like sexual orientation or income status or
Mm-hmm.
are you a U.S. citizen? Like that there
Mm-hmm.
are areas that we would highlight that's like, okay, in this area you do have privilege. Are you, when you go for a job or are voting or trying to market something, being like using that to your advantage by putting down someone else, or when you hear someone say something Islamophobic or against people who are homeless, do you speak up? From what I can tell, you're probably the kind of person who says something.
Oh, is that what you think? Where'd you get that impression from, Tom? I don't know how you would have ever come to that conclusion. You know what's funny is I don't know. You told me that you were like kind of getting into punk rock around the time that you were in college, and so I was kind of trying to guess like what time frame that was. But I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. And
Mm.
I remember very clearly thinking to myself, and I think I had a teacher at the time who might have said it too. I remember thinking like, this is going to be like Muslim people are going to experience the same kind of discrimination that Black people have been experiencing. I remember
Mm.
having that thought in my head and wondering like, oh gosh, how is this all going to play out? And sure enough, like in the years after that, there was just more and more propaganda, more and more jokes being made here and there about like, people with turbans on their heads and whatnot and terrorism and things like that. But, that's like seriously become a thing. And I've always felt like, I know what it feels like to be pushed out or made fun of or marginalized
Mm.
or, told that you were different or othered. And so I've never, ever been cool with that whenever I experience it. Now, granted, I don't want to make it seem like I'm somebody who like puts on a cape and goes out of her way to, stick up for Muslim rights. I believe Muslim people should have the same rights as anybody else. That's what I feel. But I know that there have been a couple of instances at the airport, incidentally, where I've been like, it's not okay for you to treat that person like that.
Mm.
Because I think instinctively, I just kind of knew. I was like, oh, Muslim people are going to face a really rough time. All Middle Eastern people are going to face a really rough time in the United States right now. Like no one's making the distinction between, Arab people and Persian people, and nobody's making the distinction there. They're just classifying everybody in the same little lump sum. So,
Mm.
so yeah, you were right to assume that I was somebody who would speak up because I have been, and I try to be as much as I can. I try to use my voice as instrumentally as possible. I mean, I have a voice that just vocally, it's very loud and it can get people's attention. But what I've realized is that getting people's attention isn't the only thing. You have to have something meaningful to deliver once you get their attention. And so maybe spend some time being quiet until you figure out something meaningful to say.
Mm. What I was hearing you say is that like you will never have the ability to, in areas of your life where you do have privilege, I will never be able to use that privilege with the power of a white man. Like I'll still be using that power, that privilege as a Black woman.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I know. I can't step into the shoes of a white guy. I can try, I can empathize as much as possible. But ultimately, yeah, no, my experience is always going to come from the lens of being a Black woman.
Which is why I think, and this isn't I'm not the one who's saying this. This is, like Angela Davis and, really awesome feminist writers. That's why at the forefront of most revolutions or most activism, the vanguard is always Black women. Because when you think of like the white wave of feminism was, we want to eliminate sexism so that we can be as powerful as white men. It wasn't, we want to end all forms of discrimination, whereas Black feminism was that, because like there's no way that either way, like we have to end it all. And I think it's because of like what you're talking about, like when 9/11 happened for me, I didn't know what Muslims were. I didn't think, oh, they're going to start to be discriminated against, because I had no reference point for what discrimination felt like. I'd been bullied. I've been, biased as an individual, but not as an individual just because I was a part of a group of people. You know what I mean?
Yes. So were you in high school when 9/11 happened?
I was a freshman.
Okay, yes. So, yeah, you were a few years behind me, but I would really love to get up to New York and visit that memorial, because my English teacher, so my senior year in high school, my English teacher, she was actually pregnant, but she had a cousin who was on the Florida, the New York Fire Department. He worked for one of the stations out there, and he ended up going missing after 9/11.
Wow.
And they never found him.
Oh my God.
So she took off to go to his memorial service during our senior year. It was really eventful because she went to that and then she came back, and she must have only been there for like maybe 2 more months, because I remember right before we went out for Christmas, she brought her newborn baby back and we got to meet him, and we had a different teacher for the remainder of the year. But anyway, all that aside, so 9/11 affected me in such a crazy, like, I say it's crazy because I wasn't there. I'm not from New York. I've never, other than, passing through New York to get to Niagara Falls or stopping there briefly on a layover, I've not spent any time in New York. So I'm not somebody who, I don't have like a serious personal connection. And so I always think it's kind of funny when I talk about how much how much 9/11 impacted me, but I feel like it did. I feel like it really changed my senior year of high school a lot. Okay, my daisies are looking so pretty.
My piece of paper is coming together as well. I wish I had a black marker. Let me see if there's one in my box.
Okay. Okay, so we're almost out of time, and I'm thinking that there's probably more questions that I should ask you. So,
well, you wanted to talk about Adora.
Sure, yeah. Since you volunteered, let's hear about your wife.
What do you want to know?
Okay, so how did you meet her?
We met on OkCupid, which is a dating app.
Yes, I've heard of OkCupid before.
So, messaged her. I messaged her and said, so I found on OkCupid, if you actually said something like that was other than, hey, you know what I'm saying? Or like a copy and paste. If you actually acknowledge the person was a human being, and that you actually wanted to go on a date with them because it's them, not because they're just a body, then, but anyways, all that to say, I said that, like, hey, you seem really cool. I'd like to meet up. I do recognize that, though I'm outside of the age range of what you're looking to date, but, I still suggest you give me a shot. Yeah. So then she replied and was like, well, I also see I'm outside of your age range. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So then I went and changed it right away, changed the age range, was like, never mind, we're good. So she's like, okay, fine, let me give this a shot. So LA traffic, long story short, she wouldn't give me her phone number or her real name. So there's no way I could get a hold of her. And I didn't know that there was an OkCupid app. This was before I was all into technology. Okay. So I was driving, and it was taking me an hour and a half to get to where we were meeting because of traffic, and I had no way to tell her. And then I got there, and valet was full. So complications on complications. I ended up being 15 minutes late. So when I got there, she was gone. After 10 minutes, she was like, screw this guy, I'm out of here.
She's like, bye.
So that was our first date. 15 minutes late, you're done. I'm out of here. So I logged on to a computer and was like, I'm so sorry, my apologies, just took ownership of it and was like, give me one more chance. So this was maybe like May 10th. And she told me
May 10th, seriously?
it was like the beginning of May.
That's my birthday though, May 10th. So
Really?
I think it's funny that you pulled that date out of thin air,
Wow.
because that's like one of the most important dates ever to me. So awesome.
I was intuiting that.
Yeah.
So she said, okay, fine. You can have another chance in June. So then like,
She was like, you have to wait another month because you wasted my 10 minutes. That's awesome.
So June 1st, I was like, it's June. So then every June 1st, she always, when she wakes up, it's always like, it's June. So she gave me another chance. She said, okay, tell me when you get there. And if you're there on time, I'll let you know if I'm going to come or not.
Oh, okay.
I liked this. I liked how she had standards. It was very comfortable communicating her boundaries. So this time, and I was so sick. When the day of our date arrived, I was so sick. But I knew if I told her out, can we reschedule? I'd never get another chance.
Yeah.
So instead, I got there 2.5 hours early. I brought a book.
Hi. Keep going. I'm listening.
And she was like, okay, I'll show up. And she showed up, and the rest was history. And these videos live forever. So 10 years later, when y'all are in high school.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be able to pull this up and show it to people. Okay. 10 more minutes, I promise. Okay. Do you guys plan on having children?
Adora is 25 weeks pregnant.
Oh my God. That is so exciting.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes. I get to release that, right? Like I get to put that into my podcast episode.
Yep. She gave me permission at 23 weeks.
That is so cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting. I'm really excited for you guys. Oh my gosh, my husband and we're past that phase, obviously, but it was fun. We had a good time. Like he likes pregnant Antoinette. Okay, so one question that I want to ask you before we wrap up is when I sat with you before, you asked me what my definition of grace was. And I kind of scrambled to say something. And so I'd like to hear more about what your definition of grace is.
It's funny you say that because, we're recording this right now in December. And so once we finish recording, I always try to record too. Once I put on all the makeup and everything and shave, let me record another episode while I'm here. So I'm going to record my final year of grace episode where I'm going to talk about my reflections upon what is grace. So two big things for me. So in my personal life, when I'm in those moments where I'm efforting and I'm equating, like as Brene Brown says, like I'm hustling for my worthiness. And the equation is that like work and efforting, even when it's painful, is what's going to equal success. And that is what's going to equal happiness. So when I'm in that loop and I pause and I step back and I say, and I really ask myself, what do I really want right now? And if it's genuine, I want to go lay down, or I want to go do a spin class, or whatever is that thing that's going to bring me joy. When I do that thing instead of the efforting thing, and then all of a sudden, like that, in an instant, that thing that I've been trying so hard to make happen, when I finally let go, and in an instant it comes to me, that phenomenon I call grace.
Okay, I like that because I actually just recently had a situation with that where there was something that I was just really, really gunning for. And I was just, like pushing, like strong arming for it. And then I let go. I was like, you know what? It's just whatever. It'll happen when it happens. And I turned my back for a split second and then bam, it came together just like that. And I was so surprised and blown away. But I was also kind of like, okay, why didn't I see that coming? Of course it's going to happen that way. I have babies on the floor of my office.
That should be on a shirt.
All right, I know. You're so smart, Tom. Watch me put it on a shirt.
Okay, let's see your drawing. I like it.
Yes.
We have
You see it?
very similar colors.
Yeah, we do. That's amazing. I used all my favorite colors on this, so I'm happy with it.
That's awesome. Let's hold it up for 2 seconds and we'll take a screenshot and post edit.
Okay. Tom, thank you so much for agreeing to color with me. I had a good time talking with you.
And I did not. It was terrible.
Okay, you know what? I tried something new and look at what it got me.
No, I did too. It was super amazing. You were totally right that you get very laid back. There's things, that I shared and got a chance to talk about in here that I haven't before. And, for 3 years, I ran a nonprofit where I did creative arts with kids to process their emotions. And so I haven't really got a chance to do this in a while. So I appreciate getting a chance to get back into the coloring game. So it's an honor. Thank you so much as well.
Yes, definitely. So be sure to check out the podcast for more coloring episodes because I'm planning to upload some more because this is very relaxing. I feel good after doing all of this and having a chance to talk.
For folks who are listening to Antoinette's podcast, if you want to connect, you can get in touch with me at Tom Earl, EARL artist, at Tom Earl artist, or tomearl.com, EARL. And what's your social for folks listening to the replay on my episode?
Yes. And so if you're looking for me, you can find me at The Midday Reset on Instagram. Also, same thing for Facebook at The Midday Reset. And we have a brand new shiny website that you can check out at middayreset.com.
Boom. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.